And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Of all the games that I've been reviewing over the past couple weeks, this is the one that I was really looking forward to. Dominant Species, when it came out last year, blew me away. I knew who Chad Jensen was. I knew he had done the Combat Commander series, and it was a good series. Dominant Species, I looked at it, and it looked kind of interesting, but when I played it, woo! Amazing. Well, this one had even more hype behind it, and this one has a theme that I enjoy, that of building a city. The SimCity series of games has always been one that I've gotten a big kick out of, and Urban Sprawl here just has all that in spades, and with an awesome designer, woohoo! All right, well, let's get into the game, and then we'll talk more about it at the end.
Now, I'm not going to attempt to explain this game in any kind of detail. It's not that it's that difficult of a game to explain or go through. It isn't. It's just that there is a decent amount involved with it. But essentially what you're doing here is you're building a city. You can see there's some buildings that are placed on the board at the beginning of the game, and players will place cubes on those buildings to claim them. Now, one of the interesting features of this game, and that's basically what I'm going to talk about here, is interesting features, is the value of these lots. You can see here, and the value comes into play a lot. You can see here that, for example, this here is a commercial building. You can tell that because it has a yellow background. Pink happens to own this specific commercial building, but it's in this 2 row with the 4 column, so that has a value of 6. And many times during the course of the game, you're going to refer to who has the most valuable buildings. And as the game progresses, more numbers are going to be placed in different rows. So if this number was placed up there, for example, that same building now is worth 15. Although that 9 would not be placed there, that 9 would be placed over here. But that would still make it worth 15. And then I could put another number up here, which would make it worth 20. And what this really ties into is you want to get as many buildings on the board as you can with your colors on them, because when players take cards from these rows, and as the cards cycle down, when a new card is revealed, we look at the number down here and it says 9. So whoever has the most buildings in 9 is going to get $9, and the second most gets half of that, etc. And over here, when cards are turned over and added to the thing, we look at their number, and the players in those columns or rows, or whoever has the most in row column 6, if there is any, is going to get 6 points, and the second most will get 3 points. And this is a very intriguing way to bring money and points into the game, and it's going to make you watch where you place your buildings carefully. Now, what you're going to be doing over the course of the game is you're trying to get these build permits. You're trying to get money too, but you're trying to get these build permits. And these build permits are good for a couple reasons. One, because at the beginning of your turn you can discard them and take that much money. Okay, but also this one's worth 4 build permits, this is worth 1, and this one can be used in civic, commercial, and industrial buildings, while this one can be used in all 4, including residential buildings. But when I want to build a house, let's say I want to build a textile mill, this is going to cost 2 permits in the industrial. So I have 2 on this card. So I use this card to pay for this. And then this will give me a special building. It's a size 2 building. That's commercial, that I'm going to bring out on the board and place somewhere, and then I look at the value of where I place it, and that's how much money it cost me to put that out there. Now, unfortunately, once you build a textile mill and you get special abilities from it, then you don't need the card anymore. And once the building's on the board, it's not really a building, it's just part of a zone that you have. Now, another thing that I like about this game, and I am jumping a bit around here, so keep that in mind, but another thing I like about this game is on your turn, you have 6 action points, and you can take these cards for action. So I could take this one that costs 2, and if I want this one that's 3, but I only have 1 action left. And they're the same over here. So here's where I take contract cards to prepare to build buildings, and over here is I can take the building cards and build them. And there's 3 decks of buildings. You have the town deck, which is what you start with, but after a certain event comes, then the city deck will come out, and then the metropolis deck, and the buildings get bigger and better. Sometimes, eventually, as the game progresses, there will be elections triggered, moved around here, and there's different things. You could be the police chief, the district attorney, the treasurer, the union boss, or the mayor itself. And each of those gives you a benefit. The contractor is something that the game has provided that goes to the person in last place at a certain point in the game, and they are allowed to build over top of other people's buildings who cannot build back on top of theirs. So really, what this game is, in a nutshell, is you are trying to get these so that you can build the buildings and put them on the board, which will then produce you money and points. And many events are in these decks that will give more money and points to people who have usually the best building. Sometimes you will build things to get vocations, and these vocations can get you points. You can do all sorts of things. Even money at the end of the game will get you points, and the player with the most points at the end of the game is the winner. It's a very simple concept, but it can bog down into more complexity just based on all the special abilities that the cards have. You really can't take your turn ahead of time, because if someone buys, let's say, these cards, then these come and more cards are going to show up that you perhaps did not even know were in the deck. So you really can't plan ahead of time. You just have to wait to your turn and then look at and see what's out there and decide what you're going to do. There's a card in the Metropolis deck that will trigger the end of the game. At that time, whoever has the most points wins, although you can convert your money and everything else that you have into getting points. And if you are, for example, the police chief, you'll get extra points for every residential building you have in play, and so on. These vocations, these political positions can be very point-swingy near the end of the game.
Yeah, this one's a disappointment for me. Which is kind of weird, because when I play it, there's so much about it that I like. I love the different kinds of buildings. I love the action point system. I like the rows and columns and getting money when your cards tipped over. That's brilliant. And it fits together, and it has a very strong theme in it. It's long and chaotic, but I don't necessarily mind that so much. But this is why I'm not a fan of the game. I don't dislike it, okay? But let me tell you why I was not nearly as enthused about this as I thought. So here's my reasons. We'll start from the small ones and get bigger. One of the small ones is, when you play a building and you put it on the board, it's no longer a building. It's just there. I mean, like if I build a library, I have to get rid of the card. So I build a library, but now it's just a building. I don't know. That just seems a little anti-thematic to some degree. If I build a library, I better have my library there. But I can live with that. That's not a big deal. The bigger killers are this. There's three of them. Okay? One is this downtime. I played it with 2 players, and it's not nearly so bad. 3 players, more manageable. 4 players, it's hideous. It's terrible. Now, I hate downtime in a game. And one of the ways you can work with downtime in a game is you tell someone, you say, hey, think about your turn when someone else is going, and then you can go. But how can someone think about their turn when their cards aren't even there? You have to wait until it's your turn, until it's time to go, and then you look at the cards that are out there. Then you can play them. And that's just, you're just sitting there and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then your turn comes, and then you can look at the board and then decide what to do. The second is the randomosity. Now, I love random, and I love chaos. Cosmic Encounter is chaotic. I love chaotic games. My concern is I'm not sure I want to play a chaotic game that's essentially 3 hours long. And the swings are so wild. I mean, there's a card at the end that basically just says, take points away from the leaders and give it to the person in last place. Why? I mean, come on, it's terrible. And just whoever has the highest building at this in this type gets 6 points, and this happens, and a tornado comes through. And look, I know that you need to work with chaos. It's not a problem. But in this game, chaos often can decide the outcome of the game. And in a 3-hour game, that's not acceptable. Now, I complained earlier in a game called Outpost. I hate the rich get richer thing. Someone's way out ahead, and they just keep getting better and better and better. This game kind of takes the opposite approach to that. The person who's in last place has this catch-up mechanic, which I just abhor. It's like a sledgehammer. It's this contractor card, which lets you destroy other people's buildings and play on top of them. And your buildings can't be destroyed. So the person in last place just becomes this behemoth of destruction. Wah, wah, wah! Blowing up the guy in first place buildings. Okay, since he's in the lead. Then they are no longer in last place because this is going to get them points somehow, and they'll move up. And then the next person in last place hits the first person again. And this just keeps happening time and time until finally the first person's in last place. So what does he do? Same thing. And that's just such a clumsy catch-up mechanic. And it's very frustrating when you are in the lead because there's nothing you can do to stop it. You just sit there and watch your buildings get blown away. So there's interaction in the game, but it's just not the kind that I'm interested in. Now the elections, they're interesting, but you know what? They're not elections. They call them elections, but basically it says whoever has the highest building wins the election for police chief or whatever. How's that an election? I guess. It'd be cool if there was some kind of election mechanic. But be it as it may, I did like those politicians. They're neat, and they have bonuses and such. And I don't know. Could I have designed a better game? Probably not. It's just that I like playing longer games. I don't mind them if they keep me involved the whole time. But I would say for at least 50% of the time when I play this, I'm not involved because I'm waiting for other people to take their turns, and what they do doesn't interest me that much. Then, beyond that, it just gets so crazy near the end. And I don't mind crazy games of chaos and points all over the place, but they shouldn't take this long. I really wanted to like this game, and there's a lot of aspects about it I do like. And I could probably be wheedled into playing a game of it. But I wouldn't ask, and I would think about, is there another style game that I could play instead because of those reasons? Urban Sprawl. It's a bit of a disappointment for me.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.